Hello everyone, and here we have a new story. Before we get to that, I want to ask you to subscribe, like, and be sure to write comments in order to participate in the development of the community. I want to thank everyone for their support and the people who wrote to me by mail, broadcasting news stories. Don't forget to put a bell in order not to miss new videos. And now let's go. I woke up early in the morning, washed, dressed quickly, and went to the kitchen. There was a thermos of food on the kitchen table that my wife had prepared for me. But I didn't take the food because I was in trouble with my wife. How it all started, I'll tell you now, my wife. Without saying a word to me, she went to the reunion, but she told me she was going to meet a friend. When I picked her up around 1 o'clock in the morning, I watched as a cheerful group of her classmates ran out of a restaurant where there were a lot of guys. And one of them hugged my drunk wife and said something in her ear. In response, she smiled sweetly. In a rage, I got out of the car, walked up to them, pulled my wife out of his arms, and led her to the car. I heard a furious protest behind me, turned around and punched him in the face. He fell to the floor. Everyone looked at me with fury, but there was no fight because they recognized me. I once studied with them and was a year older. I realized that the incident was over, took my wife by the hand and dragged her to the car, threw her into the car, silently got behind the wheel and drove home. All the way while we were driving, she told me that I hit him and behaved ugly, shamed her in front of classmates. To which I replied that you yourself asked me to come by this time and pick you up. But you saw that I wasn't the only one. You could have asked if I was going or not, she screamed. I saw him hugging you. Let's leave it off and talk tomorrow, I told her. In the morning, our conversation didn't work out. Everything turned into a scandal. Her friend added fuel to the fire who called her and accused her of leaving them. They had fun, and that guy with the black eye went home in the morning. My wife started screaming and accusing me of hitting him without understanding. Began to defend him. Allegedly, he came for one day from another city, and he has problems with his wife. To which I replied that he had already managed to crowd you. We talked to him at the restaurant, she replied. What else did you manage to do there? Judging by the way he hugged you, he expected to continue. It's none of your business, she shouted. He's my friend. And then I was stunned why I had never heard of him. And we have been together for 15 years. Our son is 10 years old. Our daughter is 12. And suddenly he appears. Stop talking nonsense. And in general, I went to my friend, she said, turned around, slammed the door, and left. Left alone, I thought that yesterday she also went to her friend's house. As a result, she did not answer my calls. And I caught her with a group of guys in a restaurant. In a rage, I texted her, you don't have to come home and don't call. I'm not going to pick you up anymore. After that, my wife got drunk on freedom. I took the children to my mother and she spent all her time with her friends in nightclubs and pubs. She told me that I have enough children on weekdays, but now they're not there and I want to live for myself. I moved my things to a spare room so as not to cross paths with her. She came back in the morning, came into my room and said that now you will eat separately. I will not cook for you. I ignored her and silently continued watching TV. And then she raises her tone and asks, how long will it last? Until you change your behavior, I stopped believing you. You started cheating in response, she heard. Slamming the door, she went to bed, and I spent half the night thinking about her deception. And she knew where she was going, put on a dress, took off her wedding ring. God, she has changed and is no longer the woman I married 15 years ago. As a result, I went to cook dinner, then she appears in the kitchen, sits down, puts food on herself, opens a bottle of fortified wine and starts dinner. And then I couldn't stand it. Call the children to find out how they are doing. You've already forgotten about them. As a result, the conversation didn't work out. We just yelled at each other again. She got ready and went for a drink to the pub, which was located next to the house. In the morning, leaving for work, I met her drunk outside the house and reminded her that it was Monday and she also had to go to work. You could have reminded me earlier, she said, and we quarreled again on the street in front of everyone. In the end, I turned around and went to work. At work, my head was full of thoughts all day that it was all a friend advising her how to behave in a relationship with her husband. As a result, I was mentally tired of thinking about this whole situation, decided to talk to the boss, explain what was happening at my house, and asked to send me on a business trip for a couple of days. The boss said with understanding that I could rent a hotel in the city and relax there. But I insisted on working and getting distracted. After warning my wife, I packed my things and went to the train station, boarded a compartment train, and ran into a guy with a big bag who seemed painfully familiar to me. And then I was stunned. It was the same guy who hugged my wife in the restaurant. I got off the train and decided to follow. He rented a room in the Central Hotel. I rented a room nearby and decided to wait for my wife. Sitting in the lobby of the hotel, I waited, and then I saw him leave in a hurry, leaving his things in the room. I was an engineer. I once worked with an elevator in this hotel because it was considered a complex engineering structure. I dialed the number of the hotel director, examined the entire 𝐒𝐡𝐤, and asked for a card from all the doors. We communicated well. I helped him many times, so he went to a meeting and gave me this 𝐿𝐴𝐿. I decided not to wait and immediately went to my room. When I entered, I saw a large bag on the table and an open laptop. Going to the laptop, I saw an open correspondence with my wife. They were chatting sweetly, and today at 5 p.m. after work she was supposed to come to his room. I won't tell you all the correspondence, but I already realized that they had sex more than once. Still looking through his correspondence, I came across a conversation with a friend of my wife who completely helped and gave advice on how and what to write to my wife. Well, of course, she knew how things were in our family. My wife completely devoted her to this. In the end, while I was reading all this, he received a notification from a man which said, "Well, where are you already all in force?" After opening the correspondence, I realized that this man was engaged in the sale of heavy drugs, so he earned a living, and in his big bag there was a product that he had to hand over. And then I was shocked and decided to wait for my wife and catch her on the hot. The information I received just didn't fit in my head. And finally, I waited in his room for a reserved table at his request. And then I see my wife and her friend walking in the presence of two guys. Most likely, he called a friend. They went to his room, and the fun began. Music was playing loudly. Everyone was laughing and drinking. I sat there. Anger overwhelmed me, but I understood that I had to be patient and not go into the room ahead of time. After a while, the music stopped and my wife's friend left the room with the second guy and flirted in the next room. I stood near the door, trying to listen to what was going on there. My breathing leveled out. Emotions overwhelmed me. My hands were shaking. Then I heard my wife moaning, took out a key card and broke into the room. I saw a pile of booze and scattered powder on the table, turned my head towards the bedroom and saw my wife's underwear scattered. Running into the bedroom, I saw my wife riding him. I grabbed her by the hair and threw her to the floor. He began to be beaten right in bed. As a result, I dragged them into the hotel corridor. Because of the screams, people called the police. My wife was crying, holding my legs, begging for forgiveness. I was disgusted even to look at her. Her friend ran out of the next room with her new boyfriend, who started attacking me, and I also hit him in the face. Eventually, the police arrived. They took us all to the police station. I was lucky they let me go because they found a large batch of drugs in his possession. It turned out that he put the powder in the drinks of my wife and her friend, and they were also high. My wife ended up in a rehabilitation center with psychological disorders. The guy was put in jail. What happened to her friend? I don't even know. I didn't care. A week has passed. I've moved away from what is happening, and then I get a call from an unknown number. I pick up the phone and hear, "Hello, hello, I'm Jack's wife, and this is my wife's lover." We agreed to meet with her and discuss what was happening. As it turned out, his wife is a good person, and she was just unlucky, and she got into a stupid situation with me. After discussing everything, I went to my mom and picked up the kids, called my boss at work, and took a short vacation. I went with the children to nature. Looking at them, at how happy they were, I forgot about what was happening. And I realized that life goes on. Children are all I have, and I don't need anything else. After a while, my wife was discharged from the clinic and she returned home. To be honest, I didn't want to see her, but I had to. She cried and begged for forgiveness. Most of all, I couldn't forgive her. I can't stand the betrayal of loved ones. I filed for divorce. We sued for a long time. The court was on my side because she used drugs. In the end, I took everything from her. Now I live with my children. She lives with her parents, often calls me and tries to beg for forgiveness. You may think I'm a monster, but I can't ask her. I want her to suffer. I do not know. Maybe over time I will completely move away. After all, we have lived together for a long time, and for the sake of the children, it is still worth returning their mother to them. What do you think? Write in the comments. I will definitely read it. Now I need advice more than ever. Maybe someone has forgiven and survived a similar situation. With that, I think we'll finish in advance. Thank you all. Channel author's advice. It is obvious that you have experienced an extremely difficult and emotionally charged experience. Betrayal, infidelity, addiction to drugs, and subsequent consequences have deeply affected you and your family. It's important to recognize that these feelings of anger, resentment, and confusion are well-founded and natural reactions to the situation you've been through. Here are some tips to consider. Focus on taking care of yourself and your children. Your emotions have rolled like a roller coaster, and this is important for ensuring your mental and emotional well-being. This may include seeking professional help from a therapist or counselor who will help you sort out your feelings and develop coping strategies. Despite the fact that you have decided to divorce, it is still important to communicate with your wife, especially when it comes to issues concerning your children. Co-parenting can be a daunting task, but maintaining a level of politeness and open communication will benefit children. You don't have to go through this alone. Reach out to friends, family, or support groups to share your feelings and experiences. Communicating with other people who have been through similar situations can provide valuable information and emotional support. Forgiveness is a personal journey, and it often takes time. Although you may not be ready to forgive your wife right now, it's worth considering that forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean reconciliation in a relationship. It may be about getting rid of anger and resentment for the sake of your own well-being. Healing is a process, and it's okay if you spend as much time on it as you need. Your children are undoubtedly a priority here. Maintain a stable and supportive environment for them. Keep open communication channels with them so that they feel safe and receive support during this difficult time. Over time, you might consider a future relationship. Remember that every relationship is unique, and it's important to approach them with a clear understanding of your own needs, boundaries, and lessons learned up. This experience can serve as an opportunity for self-reflection and personal growth. Think about what you have learned from this situation and how you can apply these lessons for your personal development. Given the legal and financial implications of your divorce, it's important to make sure you have proper legal representation to deal with these issues effectively. Remember that healing takes time and there is no one-size-fits-all solution. You have shown strength by coping with a difficult situation, and as you move forward, continue to prioritize your well-being and the well-being of your children. Friends, what do you say about this? Let's help a man figure it out. He needs life advice more than ever. Thank you for joining me on this exciting journey of love, betrayal, and redemption. I appreciate your support and encourage you to subscribe, like, and share this story. Your participation and feedback are invaluable for sharing our content and promoting mutual understanding and community growth. Until we meet again.